I did not elicit this by accident. Embarrassment is something that the Beats value. When Ginsberg first read Howl, he was on stage, and there was a little bathroom. This was in a, I think it was in a bookstore. I can't remember. I didn't reread my notes on Howl. So when the show started, he was in the bathroom on the pot with the door open. And then he sort of he got up and he hiked up his pants and he waltzed out and he gave his reading of Howl. This is indicative of the sense that he wants to lay bare in a literal way all the seaminess of human life, all the aspects of what it means to be an embodied person, all the ecstasies that come from that embodiment. And of course, this is not at all original to Ginsberg. If you read Walt Whitman, you will see much of the same ethos and probably a lot better poetry. So Ginsberg is not the first to do this in the American tradition for sure, but it's a very important part of what the Beats revive. And I want to get at that question of embarrassment because it comes up very explicitly on page 36. Embarrassment is thematized in On the Road. And it's assigned what I think is a very interesting provenance. So this is Chad King talking to Sal Paradise. A quavering twang comes out when he speaks. The thing I always liked, Sal, about the Plains Indians was the way they always got so danged embarrassed after they boasted the number of scalps they got. In Ruxton's Life in the Far West, there's an Indian who gets all red over blushing because he's got so many scalps and he runs like hell into the plains to glory over his deeds in hiding. Damn, that tickled me. The sense of embarrassment is the sense that the excess of what? Joy in this passage, the Indian's bravery, his achievement, his success, all of that is in excess of the decorous presentation of that experience, of that real world of life, of that excessive joy. And it's given here this sort of cliched, noble origin with the Native American, the Plains Indian. So there's a sense in the Plains Indian that he is both the embodiment of a noble, restrained lineage, but also deep in that American past is this sense of great excess. Embarrassment tells us we're in the presence of the excess. And that's why beat writers court it. That's why I courted it today for you. The excess requires, for the Beats, a new kind of language. One aspect of their language, which maybe you've noticed in On the Road, it's not quite so pronounced in On the Road as it is elsewhere, certainly in the letters that these figures write to each other. Part of that is the elimination of small words, the, and, the abbreviation of certain words, your to yr. There are all kinds of little abbreviations they make. And it suggests that language has to be wrenched out of its conventions. Syntax can be set aside. Language needs to move at the speed of experience and at the speed of ecstasy. So that's one small way in the language that they practiced, tried to imitate the experience that they were immersing themselves in. But there were more formulated ways of capturing that experience in language. Jack Kerouac had a list of essentials that he taped up on his wall when he was writing. And this is what they include. Scribbled secret notebooks and wild typewritten pages for your own joy, and that's YR, your own joy. Submissive to everything, open, listening. Try never to get drunk outside your own house. Well, this is a piece of advice clearly he never took. Be in love with your life. Be crazy, dumb saint of the mind. Blow as deep as you want to blow. Write what you want, bottomless from bottom of the mind. The unspeakable visions of the individual. Entranced fixation, dreaming upon object before you. And then my favorite one is, you're a genius all the time. Now try putting that up in front of your desk. You're a genius all the time. It will help you to produce a lot of writing, I guarantee. Carawack tried over and over again to write on the road. And it was an effort to practice this kind of free language that would be uninhibited and that would gesture towards some deeper, bottomless part of the human experience, the human soul. Sometimes it was spiritualized. In this sense, this is why I put this quote up on the board from On the Road. We've got to go someplace, find something. There's a relentless seeking sense that's at the heart of this work. Now, for those of you who don't know, On the Road does document pretty closely the actual road trips that Jack Kerouac took with Neal Cassady and a whole host of others. And I can do a little decoding for you. Old Bull Lee is William Burroughs, and his wife Jane Lee. Hunka, I can't remember who Hunka is now in the book. These are some minor characters who lived with them and went to Columbia with them or were in their circle when these writers lived in the neighborhoods in New York around Columbia University. So Allen Ginsberg is Carlo Marx. And Ginsberg went to Columbia. He was kicked out of Columbia and then sort of went back. He was in and out of school. So a lot of them were in this little community, and they picked up wanderers and various people who wanted to learn from them. And that's what Neal Cassady was to them at first, a kind of wanderer who wanted to be in their intellectual but bohemian circle. So you see the kind of language that Neal represents at the very beginning of the novel. First of all, he's introduced in this very mysterious way. First reports of him, this is on the first page of part 1, middle of that first paragraph. First reports of him came to me through Chad King, who'd shown me a few letters from him written in a New Mexico reform school. So his letters come out of this western land, New Mexico, and a land of criminality, the reform school. So he's exotic just from the very beginning. And it's an exotic language. It's the letters that come out of this exotic place that first catch their attention. I was tremendously interested in the letters because they so naively and sweetly asked Chad to teach him all about Nietzsche and all the wonderful intellectual things that Chad knew. At one point, Carlo and I talked about the letters and wondered if we would ever meet the strange